how did you become a non-feminist woman?
I think I did that on my own because I was raised to be one.
Mm-hmm.
I remember when I was a little kid and I was like 12, 14.
Mm-hmm.
I was trying to open up a jar of pickles.
Mm-hmm.
And I said, I need a man, to help me open this. And my mother said, you give that to me. You don't need a man. And she opened up the jar of pickles. But I mean, I'm sorry, but you do need men. I'm sorry. There are times you need them.
Okay.
I don't even know because I just live my life and I don't consider myself a feminist and I don't know. I just don't.
Okay.
I have a vague answer for
No,
that.
no,
How
it's
about,
okay. So, what are your thoughts on the traditional gender roles?
um, as far as gender roles, everyone is their own self,
Mm-hmm.
and they all have their own personalities.
Right.
Um, they're it's like comparing apples to oranges.
Mm-hmm.
Men have their gender, women have their gender.
Mm-hmm.
Does that
So the genders are different. Men and
yes.
women are different. Okay. Um, what are your thoughts on MRAs, men's rights activists?
I think there should not be any men's right activists or women's right activists. I
Okay.
think we all should be working together in unity to solve the problems that's going around the United States or even globally.
Okay. And
We should
under what name would we work if we
be
were to
parents rights activists.
parents' rights activists? Okay. How would you have changed feminism to become something that helps people? What would you do differently? What would you add to feminism?
Um, I would educate everyone on personality disorders because that's where people start talking about gender bias and something's always the man's fault or something's always the woman's fault. I would If feminism is supposed to help everyone, then I would educate everyone on personality disorders and what to look out for when they are dating so they don't marry one and continue the intergenerational traumas.
Right. So you would say a lot of feminist complaints at the moment, like in 2024, it is based on people who have entered relationships that are with people who have personality disorders. So a lot of it is that you've entered a relationship with someone wrongfully, and
Mhm.
then you got hurt, and then it turns into sort of feminism. I mean, it turns into that you are a feminist and you believe that this is how all men are, or whatever.
Right, and not all men are like that. Even men do this. There are men haters that just hate women because they got wronged in
Right,
some way by some woman, and it's like not all of us are like that. You can't
right,
lump everybody into one bowl.
right. So what happened most likely is that they would have been involved with someone who had a personality disorder.
Right, right.
Right,
Who really did something very wrong, and I completely agree that it was very wrong with that one woman. But
right,
not all women are like this.
right. So you would say people entering relationships need more help, sort of, yeah, to identify red flags or issues ahead of time so that they could avoid people who are negative and who will mess their lives up in a sense.
Right.
Right.
Most definitely. And people have got to slow down in these relationships. When things move fast and it's too good to be true,
Yeah.
then you then run.
Right. And probably the men and the women who are exiting those negative relationships probably need some sort of therapy.
Right. And along with these, when you say that, which is great, I think everyone should have a therapist. That's a really good one. And I always tell people to shop around because sometimes you don't click with one.
Hmm.
Then find another one that you can click with that understands you but does not enable you.
Right.
That's the thing. But with a personality disorder, they don't go to counselors or therapists because everything is your problem. And that's
Ah.
very
So it can be that the people themselves, the feminists themselves, have personality disorders.
Right. I have read and I've been told that like 1 out of 20 is a personality disorder now
In
because of all this intergenerational trauma that's
Wait,
coming
one
down.
out of 20 in the population, or 1 out of 20 feminists
1 out of 20 in the population.
has a personality disorder?
Right.
Right. Okay. So we probably have
Oh,
within our population, we have an increasing number of people with personality disorders, and that could
right.
explain a lot of the hate between the two genders.
Right. And that is also when I say personality disorder, I also should have said sociopaths. 1 out of 20 is a sociopath.
Okay. What is a sociopath? How would we? I don't know.
Okay, so a sociopath is just someone who has no empathy.
Right.
They they don't care about anyone but themselves.
Right.
Uh, they just are very uncaring
Okay.
and very conniving.
Yeah. And
Um,
are these rates increasing, or is it something that is increasing within our population?
yes, it is,
Yeah.
and this is why. And I've said this on my podcast, and I know people must hate me for it, but be careful who you're marrying because it is till death do us part. And if you're dealing with if you have accidentally married a sociopath with a charming personality, because a lot of them are
Right.
very charming, and the relationship moves too quickly or too smoothly, or you've got to be really careful.
Mm-hmm. Okay. So you would say a lot of what is going on in feminism and also in the MRA side is has something to do with personality disorders being
Right.
on the rise. Why are personality disorders on the rise at the moment, or why is it increasing?
I believe it's increasing due to the involvement of CPS and family court systems destroying families.
Okay.
When people divorce, it doesn't mean you have to run into a courtroom. You can hopefully discuss this between yourselves and come up with a plan of who will have the kids on what day. You don't
Right.
I always try to talk people out of going to court because this will stop the generational trauma and the sociopathy and personality disorders.
Okay. So how is it connected? Can you tell us more about how, how does that cause personality disorders and so on?
Okay, so when you enter a courtroom, you're already disabled according to the ADA advocates, which is true because you're already traumatized as soon as you walk in there because you don't want to go in. At least I didn't want to go in there.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, there are people that actually enjoy going in there
Mm-hmm.
and putting someone through legal and financial abuse
Mm-hmm.
and taking the kids away. And that's why I wrote that book, Dismantling Family Court Corruption, Why Taking the Kids Away, because these personality disorders, including judges and including attorneys, they all participate in the legal abuse that causes the personality disorders of even the children. Because when you wrongfully take a child away from a good fit parent, it does cause a personality disorder within that child in time.
Mm-hmm. Okay. Okay. So okay, so you support the nuclear family as it was,
As it was.
right? Okay, but not necessarily traditional gender roles. You just support that the original father and mother stay together, basically monogamy.
Would be nice. It would
Yeah,
be nice.
but you
you know,
you support any type of family unit, or how do you see the family unit?
uh, just it's hard to say. I'd like to see a family unit of two parents, whether even if they're same sex. Okay,
Yeah.
some people might not like that,
Mm-hmm.
but even if they're just stay together as a family.
Mm-hmm.
Why not
Okay.
just
Okay.
stay? Like I hate to say like 1952,
Yeah.
but where has it gone? It's just rapidly went downhill,
Right.
and I do believe family court is to blame.
Okay. Okay. So you are seeking reform within family court.
I would like to see the abolishment of family court. There's no
Okay.
way you can possibly reform corruption within this system.
Okay. What would you like to see in place of family court?
Civil take everything back down to civil court where a person can have a jury. And of course, as we all know, during custody litigation, everyone slings out a silver bullet, which is a false accusation that takes away the child away from the good fit parent.
Okay.
So therefore, when that happens, if we were in civil court, either, okay, whatever that accusation is, it would have to be handled in criminal court, or it could be just dissolved in civil court by a jury of 6 people.
Right.
You could have a jury of 6 people.
Right. And they would have to prove it.
Right, they have to prove it. And you should go in there innocent until proven guilty, instead of this preponderance that you're guilty until proven innocent.
Right. Okay. So family court is a problem. And you wouldn't say it's necessarily a problem for men or for women. It's just a problem in general and also for kids. It's a problem for kids primarily, I guess.
It's a problem for kids primarily. They're the ones really suffering. And so are the targeted fit parents that are being dragged and financially burdened and legally abused within this court system.
Okay. Yeah.
It's, I do understand that men have been abused by the court system for the last 40 years, but what they also need to understand and get through their heads is that the court system is now doing this to men and women.
Mm-hmm.
And a lot of guys I have talked to said, no, it's only us. They're still taking the kids away from us. It's like, no. I don't know. I'm talking to a lot of women where they're getting their kids taken away from.
Right. It will turn it doesn't matter, man or woman, whoever earns more. And at this point, it will be the woman more and more often.
Right.
Yeah. And it gets complicated. And the reality is that the kids don't need to be taken away from anyone, you know.
Right, right. I mean, and again, as we know, unless there's something criminal going on, you know, something really inappropriate, like.
And if that is actually the case, right?
If
it is actually the case that someone is interfering with a child or there's something criminal going on, then you as a parent should take the other parent to court for that.
Right, and that's why it should.
Exactly. You don't just turn up in family court and say, "Oh, this guy is a pervert. He's interfering with my children." No, if you hear that someone is interfering with your child, you go to the police for that.
Exactly.
You understand?
Yeah. That's why we don't need CPS. We don't need them. They don't serve any earthly purpose.
Okay, but I don't know if we don't need CPS, because I mean, this is Child Protective Services. I think children need Child Protective Services.
But what these exes are doing is they're calling in false allegations. 80% of all these calls coming in are false allegations.
Oh, okay.
Okay, so the thing is, okay, so let's say we didn't have CPS, then you would call the police if the kid down the street was getting beaten up.
Right.
And you heard this kid scream. You saw this kid walk to school with bruises and horrible clothing, and you've got proof. You call the police. And if you're going to make an accusation, I think you should put your name behind it. And this is why this is a huge problem with CPS, is people can make these anonymous calls, which means they light a fire in your living room, and then they just walk out, and you're left with this huge mess you have to legally fight to get to clear your name so you can work around children.
Okay. Yeah, I could see that. Yeah, so probably CPS needs to be reformed. I don't know. I'm not in America, so I'm in Europe at the moment. The CPS here, I think it's useful, but I know that they are terrible as well in terms of they take children away from families. There was a movie about an Indian woman who had to fight CPS in, I believe, Norway or something. And it touched me because I have experienced also the CPS here being totally crazy. And so sometimes they do a lot of nonsense, but at the same time, there are, of course, I'm still grateful that they're there, because of course, if needed, to save a child is very important.
Right.
Yeah.
If they would do the right thing,
Yeah.
if child's getting beat up, we'll say the police are called. The police take the child to the emergency room for evaluation to make sure no broken bones, etc. And then they should do the right thing by looking into kinship care, but they're not doing it
Yeah.
because there are financial incentives.
Mm-hmm.
And for every child taken,
that right. Exactly. This is the problem. This is the corruption. I agree. Here in Europe, that's the problem. That's the problem. Yeah, that was what the movie was about. That it's something Chatterjee versus Norway or something like this, and it is exactly about this. And here where I am, I'm in Belgium, but I experienced CPS in the Netherlands. I used to live in the Netherlands, and I did have a problem once with them. Mm-hmm. And yes, it is crazy. My daughter, my first child, I was a first time parent, so I wasn't very good at it, I suppose. But my daughter, she started to lose weight. When she was 2, she stopped eating completely. Stopped eating, just completely stopped eating. She would only breastfeed. They have their normal child protective services, and I had to go in and I had to, to see that she's healthy. And of course, it came up that she's not, because she's losing weight. It's dangerous, She was at risk. They had medical intervention, put on special drinks, and they did help in a medical sense, right? And then they had people to come and try to teach me how to feed her and stuff. And of course, I was trying. The people were trying, but they insisted she wasn't gaining weight. They insisted that it was my fault, that I had an eating disorder and I stopped feeding her, which of course was not true. They gave me a lot of trouble. I ended up moving countries, so I got out of the problem by leaving the country. But the issue, which I found out, was the actual issue afterwards. Just as I was leaving, I found the actual issue, which was that she had teeth pain. She had something called tooth death.
Oh, yes.
Yeah. And because of how severe the pain would have been on the inside, and you couldn't really see, she couldn't eat because the back of her teeth, she chews it. So she couldn't eat because of the pain, and she had to remove the teeth from below. It is really bad, in order to fix the problem, and then she could eat after. But the point is that they didn't look into this, of course, because they wouldn't have known. Nobody knew. But without looking at all of this, they just blame the parent and threaten to take away your child and go to these extreme things and put it to you that you are some sort of monster trying to kill your child because you are, because there's a problem. And, I know how they behave. And yes, it is somewhat about money. They like to keep themselves employed. They like to believe that they have a job, and then taking a child for them is money on their books. It's proof that they have a job. It's proof that they have a purpose. And it's numbers. It's a numbers game. And they really don't care about you at the end of the day. They just need to reassure themselves that they are important and that they have a purpose and that, they can take your child. And this is a very dangerous thing, because to remove a child from a parent, even though the parent might be not the best parent, it is really a problem, because the state cannot replace a parent. We are not there yet where the state could replace what a parent is to a child. A parent has an intrinsic natural role that, psychologically we need to feel loved by our parents. It's much bigger than the state can imagine. And so they have no right or authority or it's not just when they take children away and take them away for money and then put them in strangers' homes and give other people money to take care of the child. If you really wanted to help people, you would help the parent to become a better parent before taking a child away from the parent. It really is, it is a sick thing that they do.
And see, that's where, okay, so if you want CPS reform, then you put in place that if a person makes an anonymous call, they have to give their name, number, address, phone number. Okay. So, but again, they have to work with the parent. Like, I like what you're saying, that they should be helping the parent if they don't know what to do with something.
Yeah.
But also, if
I mean,
a parent,
before taking a child, it should be
right,
so last resort that they shouldn't even come out with it within the first year or something,
right.
Yeah.
I think what these caseworkers might want to do is just accept a low
scare.
salary in order to help their fellow man. I think they get $14,000 for adopting a child out, and they do that rather quickly. So they can
Oh,
take a child from a nice fit home where parents are going, "What the heck happened? We just want our kid back." And then before you know it, it could be a week later, 2 weeks later, the child is nowhere to be found because they've been adopted out.
yes. It really, I mean, I think everybody should look at that film, Chatterjee versus Norway. And for me, it really hit home about what I've seen happen here in Europe. And it's just really such a sick thing. When they threatened me with this kind of stuff, I was so scared. I mean, and it's often here in Europe, it's often a cultural problem because you have to see that film to really understand what is going on. They're often cultural problems as well. It is far more likely for foreigners or immigrants to have their children taken away and stuff like this because we are coming into the system. We don't understand their system. We don't understand what their expectations of parenthood are. And, so there's a cultural mismatch there. I was so happy at the point in time to move and not have to deal with that. And then I was able to deal with normal doctors who actually helped me deal with the problem and didn't come at me at the point of view, you're the problem. You're going to, you are starving the child. Of course,
Right.
yes, to an extent, I was the problem. I had no idea that this was going on with my daughter. And it was probably my fault that her teeth were, in that way and so on and so on. But I mean, it was me, but I wouldn't have known that. I needed help,
Right.
Yeah.
And the
So,
thing is, if you go to the government for help, then you've just entered into an abyss of hell.
yeah. Yeah, because everything
I'm
has to be
sorry.
on their terms, in their
Yeah.
way they want it done. Yeah. Okay,
Yeah.
so what would you say to the world about, I mean, what would you say to, not the world, but do you have anything to say to the internet about feminism?
Feminism, I think we all should be helping each other instead of turning on each other.
Hmm.
This is not the, Salem witch hunts.
Yeah.
And all I see is women turning on each other. And I would like to see women pull together and also help their fellow man.
Hmm.
For instance, I was on Facebook and I saw this guy make a crack about it's all the woman's fault and this is why and it's biased in the courtroom and this and that. And I contacted him and believe it or not, we ended up on the phone for 3 hours talking about his case.
Hmm.
But this isn't all women and this is my case. And we talked and he also has come to the conclusion, and this happened like I guess 3 years ago, but we're friends to this day and he's helping women as well through
Okay.
getting them through the court system. So this is why feminism we have to unite together and realize we also have to help our fellow man. That way our children are helped in return in the end.
Right. Okay. Okay. And can you tell me a little bit about your podcast or what I can, tell me about your podcast, about your channel and
Okay, I can be found on all platforms, Apple, iTunes, Anchor FM. Well, I'm trying to get back onto Spotify. That's a nightmare. Apple, iTunes. I'm on all major platforms and YouTube, Twitter, Instagram, TikTok. But what I do is I interview, divorce attorneys, divorce coaches, judges, some former judges, and counselors. I have interviewed Lori Smith, who's awesome. She has the Clouded Compass podcast and she does trauma and healing. I usually have her on once every 3 months. But I also have litigants on telling about how they were lied to and how their case evolved into a big disaster. And maybe what could have been done differently to avoid this big disaster, if anything.